All right, everybody. Welcome back to episode 6, which is AI ethics, safety, and governance. Today, we are welcomed with Senor Eric Post. Once again, thank you so much for being here. This has been an incredible series, and we're going to kind of deep dive into the stuff that keeps people up at night. Some people, not everybody.
Oof.
You know, we're talking about ethics, we're talking about safety, we're talking about governance. How do we build this AI responsibility? What are the actual risks? Who decides what the rules are? And if there are any rules that are actually carved out in stone, and how do we ensure this technology really benefits humanity rather than potentially harm it? So this might be one of the more important conversations in this series. Take that with a grain of salt. I want to get into this risk landscape that a lot of people seem to be worried about, Eric, you know, in terms of, and I like to relate a lot of things in terms of sci-fi and reality, because the more futuristic, more advanced we become within this technological society, we're getting closer and closer to like some of these sci-fi films that we've been watching, that we grew up watching. It's bonkers, you know? So I guess short-term risks versus long-term risks, in your opinion, with the lay of the land as it is now, what do you think matters more? Should we be more concerned of these short-term today risks or tomorrow's risks?
Okay. You hit me with the zinger right at the beginning.
I did.
You know, risks like this compound. And so when I look at risk, long-term and short-term, I think their long-term risks are a product of these little decisions that we're making today. And each decision that we're making, whether we give our rights to our likeness up to a company to form AI avatars about, we give them all of our email. We use these face apps, cloning apps, when we're really just training their models. Like, these are all little decisions that we're making as a society and as individuals. And these little 2mm changes each day actually really compound in the future. So I don't know. As I look at it, there's not too much that I could look out in the future that scares me, Mo.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's too far out there. Tomorrow can't touch me. But right now can. And you can see right now some of these decisions are made both by the large companies, by individuals, by small companies, you know, where they're putting their effort. And I would say that I'm actually more scared of the way people are dividing their opinions on this technology without doing the homework to have an opinion that concrete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, let me ask you a question. What are you scared of? What keeps you up at night about this whole thing?
About AI?
Yeah.
Listen, I always, this is how I view life, right? So you fear the unknown. So the more that you can collect information, data towards the thing that scares you, the more comfortable you can become with it. That doesn't mean that you're going to know everything. It doesn't mean you're becoming an expert in the thing, but it becomes less anxiety driven, right? Just like when you're developing a new skill, the more reps that you've got, the more confidence that you build. So I look at it like that. From a kind of a bird's eye view, my biggest fear is really kind of the lay of the land in the next 20 to 50 years. Like, I just don't know what that's going to look like. And thinking about that today is just going to cause anxiety that's going to be tumultuous to my daily living with my family and my friends and my colleagues, which I don't see it really being any value. So I try to not think about it.
Ignorance is bliss, baby. Ignorance is bliss. But factually, you know, if you do spend all of your day in tomorrow, you know, you're losing time, you know, like right now. And
Yep.
So I get what you're saying. It's not the ignorance thing. You're just choosing, you know, to dial back your anxiety by living in today. I got it.
Listen, I defer to people like you for these answers, man. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I need your help.
Yeah, it's so funny.
That's probably my best source.
I love this idea about, you know, guessing, you know, about what people are worried about or what's not people are not worried about. But factually, when you do look at history, or you do look at human psychology, or you do study, you know, sociology, or you do study any of these sorts of groups, even anthropology, you can see trends. And generally speaking, on a macro trend, yes, a swift incoming change of any sort, politics, technology, medicine, whatnot, always causes a certain divide where a certain set of the population is optimistic, you know, leans in, gets excited, and a certain segment of the population is scared, fearful, and tries to avoid the inevitable. So that's just a given state of the way people are. And so I don't want to villainize anybody for being on one side or the fence or the other. I will just say that there isn't very many bad things in life that comes from educating yourself. Like, racism and sexism and bigotry all come from ignorance, as an example, and lack of education, right? Hate is generally a cause of lack of education, right? Or lack of knowledge. And so, most all of our bad feelings come from a lack of understanding. And so the more you can understand, and that's actually how I got into this whole industry in the beginning, is because I didn't understand it. And I was like, bro, are the Terminators coming? What's happening? And if that's true, if I had this sinking feeling, I was like, oh, well, I just don't understand it. So let me lean all the way in, and here I am. We talked about in another podcast that one of my biggest fears is that so many decisions are being made by so few people.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
That's a real fear we could dive into a little bit. By the way, did you see just today what the U.S. government announced just today?
No, but I fear I'm going to get heart palpitations once you tell me. Go ahead.
They're launching the Genesis mission. Okay. So basically it's a Manhattan Project for AI. So I haven't done enough research to speak on it really in this podcast with much detail, but I will suggest that people should go check this out. Basically what they're saying, they're building a national AI platform on top of US supercomputers. Okay. So I'm just going to pause there and let that sink in. They're going to run AI agents and robotic labs to automate experience for biotech, critical materials, nuclear fission, fusion, space, quantum, and semiconductors. And so, this part scares me, if I'm being perfectly honest. The government wielding big, huge, powerful AI does scare me. It is important that we do have our government. If you believe in the country that you're living in, your government needs to be the winner of the race of the superintelligence, race that we are racing. That is an important thing. But I am not a fan of ivory tower condensed power like this. I'm just not a fan of it in general in alien mode. I'm not a fan of condensed economic power. I'm not a fan of condensed military power, or only some people should have guns and not other people should have, right? I'm just not a fan of condensed power in some way. And this starts to freak me out a little bit because I know what it's like to go in the DMV. Have you heard these AI experts in government talk when, I forget her name, when she wasn't saying AI, she was saying A1. She was a appointed government official in charge of AI. I can't remember if it was education or which section she was. You have to look back up. But she was saying A1 instead of AI repeatedly, not as a one-time mistake, but repeatedly. She's saying A1, A1. And so A1 Steak Sauce actually did this whole marketing campaign around it. It came out the very next day, which is genius. But these are the government officials in charge of AI. And it's, come on. You can't. When they appointed Kamala Harris as the AI czar, a couple of years ago, I was like, come on, right? So, yes, I do have a problem when we have government thinking about things in a way that is authoritative or let's say restrictive in some way, or even elitist in that way.
So from a privacy and surveillance situation, AI requires massive data. Now, what does that mean for privacy? Is privacy dead at that point? Like, do we just kind of make our peace with it and move on? Or what's your take on that?
I think privacy is a basic right, like not a luxury. I think that's part of the reason why we would live in this country, is to believe that we have privacy. I know some of that is an illusion, but I think businesses need to treat their customer data in the same level of security as they treat their own money. That's truly how important I think that this is. The real challenge is that our society doesn't seem to care too much about their privacy in a lot of ways. So as an example, when they launched Sora 2 and everybody had the ability to make their own cameos, nobody stopped to think, oh, what we're actually doing is we're paying this company, or we're the product here, and we're giving them all of our facial recognition and all of our voice and emotions and things like that to train these models. And we're doing that because we want to make little funny videos with us, with cats with machine guns on our front porch in the Ring camera or something silly, so I believe, that privacy and safety security is something to fight for, is to something to stand for, and to guard your information and your data and, where you're tracked and all those sorts of things. Problem is, most of us have these in our pockets and don't have the right settings in place. And so that's kind of out the window. So as a society, we've tended to pretend we care about privacy and security right up until it's not convenient. And then, yeah, sure, here's my face to Sora. And yeah, sure, track my position on my phone and know everything about me. And sure, I'll get to put an Echo in my living room and in my bedroom. And, Alexa will listen in. These are things that it seems to be that is more lip service than it is. But for me and the company that I'm running, is privacy, security, and data privacy is at the beginning, because you can't add that later. You know, it's not, security isn't something that you can add late in that way. So it's either priority to you or it isn't. And I also think that that's another crossroads that people are at. And I don't think that you should like just give up your privacy and data just because it's convenient or cheap.
Agreed, 1000%. And I think that's also kind of tied into misinformation, and not just, I mean, collectively, yes, misinformation, but AI generated misinformation, you know, as we talk about deepfakes and what's true and what's not true, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. How big is this problem? Because it was already a problem prior to this AI technology, and people are getting duped. You know, now with, you know, voice recognition and voice duplication and image and all this stuff that's going to be happening. I mean, you're going to have your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle, whatever, getting a real life call with your voice that sounds precarious and dire. And now you're in a situation where you just completely are victimized.
Yeah.
And that's just one instance, right? So like, how big do you think this problem is? And do you also see it being rectified to some extent?
Well, I think that we're going to be having a constant offense and defense when it comes to bad actors using this technology, whether it's deep fakes or, you know, video, audio, or whatever. And I generally do believe that there's more good in the world than there is bad. I'm generally a pragmatic optimist. I generally think that people want better for each other than they don't. And that has to be true, or else we wouldn't be able to have a nice conversation like this. You know, so I don't think that that's naive to think that. But there are some very basic steps that families can take that will help, you know, alleviate some of these bad actors being able to text your kid with a voice that sounds like you, telling them that they're going to pick them up early, you know, with your voice from school. There are some things that will protect your elderly mom and dad from being sent a video that looks just like you, saying that you're in a jail and need money and that sort of thing. And those are very simple things. Like in my family, we have safe words. You know, so if there's some sort of thing that's happening, if it's a phone call, even a FaceTime, by the way, you can deep fake a FaceTime, phone call, or anything. We have a safe word for that. And just to verify that you are who you are, in the same way that I lock my car door, in the same way I put a PIN number on my debit card. This is not, you know, being overly worried and, you know, prepper or doomsday or whatever. It's just a very basic security thing I think every family should have now, that you and your children or your elderly parents or who that you care about and your neighbors should have a mechanisms in place to verify identity. If you're on the phone, on a FaceTime, on a Zoom call, giving a text message, getting a phone call, getting an email, any of those forms of communication should have a safe word.
Without getting too political, how do I phrase this?
You can be political. I don't care.
Well, okay. So if this is a political statement or question, are there real dangers in terms of all of this stuff related to elections, fraud, harassment, that kind of thing? Specifically elections, in any kind of government election, local, state, national level. Like I just feel the opportunity to dip your hand into something and skewing the numbers one way or another is going to be far easier. I understand that there's going to be stopgaps in place. There's going to be technology that's going to help minimize the risk and what have you. But I don't know. I just feel like elections in particular is such a fickle thing already.
Well, we had the first documented bad actor, foreign actor. China Anthropic documented the first foreign actor with an AI first, you know, hacker event where there's no people involved and they use swarms of AIs to try and hack different systems. And I don't want to go in, people can go read about that if they choose to. That was just a couple of weeks ago. Wow. And I think that's why I think that our race as a country to win the superintelligence race is the most important national security thing that we should be talking about. Even more than borders, even more than anything else. It is the thing. So the Manhattan Project, I can understand, but I don't like it consolidated in just the government. I would like you know, that to be a network of private and government institutions all working together and collaborating with the general public in some way. You know, that to me is the only way to actually ends up with the right outcome. Not we just end up with another authoritarian state. We just happen to have the same flag as the big daddy government looking over us. So, you know, I don't trade my safety for my liberty ever. And I think that's important for people to remember. But at the end of the day, the reason why it's important for us to have that level of intelligence is because if we don't, let's say China has got a better, more powerful form of AGI, they could quickly change any election by by deploying swarms of deepfake AIs across social media. They can deploy swarms in your SMS feeds. They can deploy swarms. Like, let's say that you get a voice message from your favorite actor, right? Or someone in your family giving a political viewpoint that you really want to believe because you trust the source, but the source is a deepfake. You know, they could infect millions of people simultaneously, all telling me exactly how I want to hear it, in the tone of voice I want to hear it, who I think it needs to come from to change my opinion, to infect my mind. They could deploy that. There's swarms of that if they have enough compute, enough intelligence. If you have enough compute, enough intelligence, you can take over any power grid, any water supply station, weapons systems, communications, financial systems. You know, these are very real threats, and it's really important that we get this right from our defensive standpoint so we can beat out bad actors, because wars today don't look like just bombs and bullets anymore. And wars today are for mind share, mind control, opinion control, narratives, right? Propaganda. These are the weapons of war today, and AI happens to make it a lot easier for these bad actors to take advantage of the minds that we aren't guided.
I have my answer to this question, but based off of that, what would be your answer to how do we maintain trust and credibility then? In the world
Know the
of bad
source.
actors and all this?
You have to verify source. To me, source is now the most important thing. Source. It's not what does a video look like, what does it sound like. Nano Banana 2 or Pro is now out. It's indistinguishable from reality. Finally, I can say that with clear confidence. It's indistinguishable from reality. I can make you look like you're anywhere with anybody at any time, you know, and it's indistinguishable from that. So you have to trust the source. Who made it? Who posted it? Where did it come from? And if you can't track the source or the origin, then you shouldn't trust the visual or the text or the video. You must know the source. So having a personal brand that's trusted as a business or as an individual is really powerful in today's market. But as a consumer, man, if you see something, if it's just on, let's say it's on CNN, or let's say it's on Fox, or if you don't know where it came from, you can't trust the news source. You have to find out what the source is, right? So I only follow people that I trust, that when they post something, they've done some fact checking, and then I can fact check them as well. But if I can't track the source, the origin down, it's just trash.
Yeah.
It's just trash. Yeah, I don't take it seriously. Period.
It's like traditional old school journalism, where you actually had real people, real valid information prior to all the insane craziness filled with the digital world. And it's going to take more work, and it's going to take a lot more of your brain power. But if you don't want to be duped, then...
Have you seen those funny videos? I mean, they're funny because they're silly, but like this guy, he like has his grandma thinks that Grand Theft Auto is real. Have you ever seen that? Like he's playing the video Grand Theft Auto, you know, this cop like running over people on the streets and stuff, and she thinks it's real, right? Because she's so detached from what is like, how reality, you know, how real a video game looks. And it doesn't even look that real. Grand Theft Auto, you know, doesn't even look that real compared to what you can make with VO 3.1 today, right? Or Sora 2. So, you know, it's those are cute videos, but those are just giving a little glimpse into how easy it is for people to not be able to distinguish real from fake. And so, yeah, I do have a concern about that. I think of all the things, you know, worries me with the AI, that's probably right at the top of the list.
Totally. Maybe that will be labeled media literacy or of some kind. Like being able to, you know.
But you know what? That's cool. You know, when we had that talk about education, and we were talking essentially about how part of the problem with AI is that it gives wrong answers, right? And so, you know, you're giving wrong answers. I think that's one of the best things about AI is that if you really think about it, if we're doing it, especially at a young age, you can teach discernment. You can teach children how their like fine tune their discernment and their awareness to fact check things and to sniff out, you know, things that don't quite smell right, look like out of place a little bit differently, and that will need that skill in the future, you know. So the discernment part of our brains needs to get sharpened finally right now.
Okay, I'm with you. Here's the question that I wanted to ask that I put towards down at the bottom of my list because I wasn't sure I was going to ask it. We talked about the greatest fear or not the greatest fear, but one of our fears for this Manhattan Project and how it's being governed and what have you. In terms of military application for AI outside of that spectrum, is there something in the very near future that would concern us because we are trying to, as a government, as a nation, trying to keep up with the Joneses, like autonomous weapons, robots, all that kind of stuff, apart from the intelligence game, which I understand is the long game and that's where we should be focusing on. But there are also things like autonomous weapons that kind of are scary. And, our technology with robotics is freaking advanced like crazy. So that's, I'm just thinking, what's that Will Smith movie, I, Robot? That's all that's flashing in my head right now. There's service robots that all of a sudden just get hacked and go crazy.
Sci-fi Hollywood's done a good job of warning us about problems over the years. A lot of things they've talked about decades before comes real decades later, or a flavor of it at least. It's because these are all things that can be imagined. And if a human being can imagine it, a human being can eventually make it.
Yeah.
And so there's always a progression from Hollywood into reality because it's imaginable, and therefore if it's worth doing, somebody will figure it out at some point. That's a real super interesting question. Obviously, I served in the military, but it was a long time ago, and so I'm not up to speed with the latest. I do look at it more like from the Palantir standpoint and the spying sort of standpoint. Of course, the autonomous weapons are super interesting to me because on one hand, now you don't have a human pilot at risk, but who's making the decisions, and you are able to just through the screen, have good enough field of view or have all the information needed to know if you want to pull the trigger or not, And so I would say in general, though, that war is not super logical for most things. I want to give you the answer that I actually would prefer to have, a autonomous, war jet or something like that. I want to say that. I actually will say that about commercial airlines, about us, commercially using airlines. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Humans make lots of mistakes. Humans get drunk the night before. Humans are too tired. Humans are worried about, the drama happening at home and the fight they got in their wife, and that happens. However, war is very messy, and it's not very black and white, and there are insane amount of nuance to war. So, we don't want to take this direction too far down around that path, but it's funny how my personal opinion has changed, and I draw the line between the commercial application and the military application for some of these things. And I do believe that there's a certain expertise to warfighting that I'm not sure what you can hand over yet, versus there's a certain expertise in commercialized versions of things, and I have more confidence we can hand some of those things over. The drudgery of things, not the expertise of things, but the drudgery of things. And yeah, I haven't gotten there yet with the military, to be honest.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. I was leading you to this ultimate question, which is these life and death situations. So war, medical triage, autonomous vehicles, military, all that stuff. Situations where they are literally life or death situations, whether they be commercially or military based, doesn't matter. Do you believe that there should be a level of human oversight today, tomorrow, in 50 years, 100 years? It doesn't matter how insanely intelligent this technology becomes, and again, going back to dystopian type films, sci-fi, there's machines where you could plug in a body and essentially save somebody's life because the technology oversees and overshadows a human's intellect. I get that. But you know what I'm saying? I know it's kind of out there as a question.
No. Okay. Just as a thought experiment, then the way I'd form my answer, because I don't have an answer pre-canned for this, but the way I would form the answer is this. If I want to consider government and say, oh, I do want AI running government, well, my answer is almost immediately yes, because governments are supposed to be maximized towards efficiency, effectiveness, maximize our tax dollars. We have priorities in terms of school, health, safety, security, infrastructure, so on and so forth. You can prioritize these things. You can budget towards them. You can analyze trends in demographics and immigration and markets. And so your tax rolls, you can predict much better. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to life and death, not certain.
Yeah.
And so whether it's that's in surgery or, we do talk about autonomous driving now, and, you have the kid coming out in front of the Tesla, or you've got the 3 kids over on the sidewalk, which do you train the AI to go for? Like if you have to choose one or the other, what decisions do you make there? I'm not sure about those decisions, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I'm even qualified to give an opinion on that. But in terms of AI in government, in schools, jurisdictions, municipalities, yes, because those are supposed to be maximized towards efficiency. Those are not life or death. So I think that's how I'd form the answer.
No, I love it. And I appreciate that insight, especially in terms of any form of governance, whether through education or government. It's because I find that without getting too deep in this conversation, I find that the link in the chain to this whole thing, it ends up becoming personal gain. And that's where politics come into play. And that's where things get messy. And now the system is no longer efficient. It has become this dramatic show of some kind, right? Where people are getting hurt one way or another. Anyway, I didn't want to get too deep. So I appreciate that. I agree with you 1,000%.
Yeah.
That in terms of efficiency, I think that's great. So in terms of overall regulation, so do we stifle innovation because we want to regulate things that cause little to no harm? And when I say harm, I don't mean physical harm. I'm just saying harm to the society.
Yeah,
Where
the
do
economy.
we find the economy? Yeah. So like, where do we find this balance? Do we forego, AI regulation? Should we slow down to regulate, or do we regulate as we move? So we're just kind of adapting as things are going day by day. What's your take on that, if you have one?
I've been really torn on how the government should be involved in AI regulation. There's something to be said for needing to zoom out a little bit from just our country and zoom out again into this global race that people are in. And I don't know, if we say, it's really important that we get AI alignment right, we should probably talk about head alignment, what that is. But if we need to get AI alignment right, so we need to pause all development so we can implement these structures and policies and layers and laws in place in order to do that. Well, China's not pausing. Russia's not pausing. Foreign actors are not pausing. And so where do you determine what your risk is? And I think that we have to zoom out a little bit when we answer these questions. Unfortunately, it's just not a national question anymore. It's a global question. And if we were to globally determine that this is something that we should do globally, that's another thing, but that's never going to happen. So knowing that's never going to happen, it's really hard to pause that because this Pandora's box is open. And I think it's important we get it right or faster than other countries. And I'm not saying that because I think our country is perfect. I'm saying because you've got to root for somebody, better root for the one that you're living in.
That you're living in, for sure. So, okay, so what about this then? Companies regulating themselves versus self-regulation. Like, do we trust the AI companies to regulate the system, or do we do we have to get some sort of outside?
Yeah. Obviously, companies historically have not to be good self-regulators when money's involved.
Very true.
I would love to say yes, and I would love to say I do think that there are some good people in this industry. I do think that there are some good intentioned CEOs and whatnot, and I do think that there are many people that do place, the future ahead of their personal gain in some way, especially in this field. I've talked to them. I've listened to people. I believe that to be true. And I don't think that's to be naive. Is that the norm or not? I'm not certain. Is there enough of them that I can kind of throw my faith in that? And, ultimately, since I can't control it, all I can do is get myself ready in every single way for whatever comes. And so that's kind of what I focus on. I don't typically think that Sam Altman example is anybody that I should throw my future at his feet and say, hey, I trust you to do whatever you're going to do. So I would definitely say, we're building the most powerful tool in human history, but we've barely started to read the instruction manual. We just have barely started to scratch the surface of what it is. And still you read these quotes by these scientists that say, we built this thing. We don't know exactly how it works even, and when they say things like this, those things are taken out of context and people are like, see, I told you AI is going to take over the world. Well, they're just talking about it at a different level. They just generally don't understand how the neural network, truly transforms from one node to another, as an example. It doesn't mean they don't understand the concept of it. It just has emergent properties. They're trying to figure out how those things emerged, right? Is it a bug or is it a feature? And they're figuring that out. It's a discovery process. So, it's not like when I hear these things, I get concerned. And I do think that just because like George Hinton, there's people that are considered the godfathers of AI, and some of those have expressed concern. That's still okay. I get it. What they're evolved. That still doesn't mean they're right. They're just another human being with another opinion about things.
Right.
So again, I'm not trying to push somebody up or bring somebody down here, but and somebody will hear that and say, well, that's crazy. Why would you trust the godfather of AI to their opinion and stuff like that? I'm like, I've heard the godfathers of lots of different industries be wrong about things and have a personal, reason for that I don't quite understand. And so I don't want to just take their word just because they have a label. But I do understand the technology pretty well. But I will tell you, Mo, we only know what we can see.
Yeah, I was just about to lead into that.
We only know what we can see. And by the time it trickles down, even people in the industry, even people in labs, even people on the very, very bleeding edge, they can see what this is kind of going to look like, but they still don't know. And so I just want to put that out there, that we're just having a fun conversation. And I think at the end of the day, I want people to really lean into the idea that education is their friend. Getting familiar with what this is and what this isn't is important. Not anthropomorphizing it in a certain way that gives it more virtue or value than it actually has. Understanding what a large language model in this iteration that most of us talk about AI is. You know what? While I'm on this roll, I'm going to say ChatGPT is not AI, by the way. ChatGPT is the consumer portal to use OpenAI's large language model, okay? So, but yet we're anthropomorphizing and we're mislabeling things because, okay, now I'm on a rant. Now I'm on a
go. Keep going.
thing here.
Keep going. I'm just sipping my tea.
Like BP back in the day, they're the ones that came up with the idea of the carbon footprint. You know why they did that? Is so they could offload what they were doing to the world and start getting each other to blame each other for our carbon footprints. Oh, you drive this Tahoe and Suburban, and oh, you fly? Well, then you're to blame for wrecking the ozone and the rainforest and all this kind of stuff. They did that as one of the best marketing schemes ever to offload the responsibility of what was happening to the environment as a result of oil and gas and all those things. It's not, that's the carbon footprint. The same thing is happening here. We're blaming AI for things, but we're not blaming the people in charge of building the supercomputers. And these are people. We don't need to blame AI. We should blame the people that are building these things and making these decisions and all that kind of stuff. This is a people thing, not an AI thing, right? So there's marketing here that we have to be really careful about, and directing our either our anger, our frustration, or our pride, or what's the word I'm trying to think of when I give you kudos? Right? Our commendments, right? Our props in the right direction. And so these are just, I just want to be clear, like ChatGPT is not AI. ChatGPT is a portal to OpenAI's large language model that you're using.
Just to give a simple side by side, would you say the comparison would be, it's like people say that ChatGPT is AI would be the same as saying like, well, electricity is a light bulb?
Yeah.
In essence,
sure.
Everyone that I've spoken to, ChatGPT to them, which is the number one thing, I think the most common large language model, people's top of mind is ChatGPT, and to them, it is AI. There is no difference in, it's one or the same. So I think I really appreciate you kind of giving that explanation. Differentiator there.
Yeah, and they're losing, by the way, on that race. Gemini and Claude are both taking over in terms of API tokens and consumer users, and that's fine. And I don't wish any poor thing on OpenAI. I'm just saying that it's interesting to watch them kind of try to figure out now what to do and how to monetize it. And they're trying all these different ways, and they're raising a lot more money in order to make this still happen. And the machine is getting a little bit wary.
Yeah, I mean, in one instance, competition will breed the best. Right? It's just going to. But on the other instance, like if you become too desperate because you're losing the race, that's where things you start dabbling in things that maybe you shouldn't be dabbling into. You know what I'm saying?
I'll give you, I for sure. Like for instance, people are releasing these agentic web browsers, like Comet as an example.
Which I use now, by the way.
Yeah. So just be careful about prompt injections.
Yeah.
You send your agentic browser out, and it hits a Reddit thread where they've injected a prompt and then we'll go back and hijack your email, give the username and password and all the credentials, to this person, because they hijacked your AI that's in your browser or your files or whatever. And there's not a good way to protect yourself against that now. So when you use things like that, you should just really know what I use it sometimes too, but I really understand, what I should be using it for and what I'm not. And do I trust it? When do I have it on and when don't I, and things like that. So,
I still use Brave as my primary, and then secondary would be Chrome.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know, because I was about to plan to make the full switch to Comment, but I don't think I'm going to now.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. One of my favorite little silly use cases for it is that when you're at a checkout and there's like a coupon code and you don't have the coupon code, just have it go find one for you. You shouldn't have to pay full price anymore. You don't find a coupon code. It's better than Google, right? To find that coupon code. So you can.
So one of the primary use cases I use for large, especially I use
great
Perplexity the most for that. Just like I need to find, and I always find one. There's always something lingering in there.
Yeah. Well, now I have the
why
AF.
Not? I just saved $17. Like, why did I have to pay an extra $17 for something?
There you go. Anyway. There you go. Exactly.
All right. I appreciate this. Let's head into the rapid fire section, and I'll send you on your way. I know you got a lot of things to do running this company. So, all right. Number one, biggest AI risk right now, in your opinion?
That's the question.
Yeah. What is the biggest AI risk right now you see? And this is AI collectively.
I think us getting it. This is an interesting answer. I haven't thought about it this way before, but today, after I've been doing my journaling this morning, I think it's getting it wrong economically.
Ooh.
Actually, you can see what's happening in the economy and where money's being pushed around, and it's kind of the shell game from one company to the chip manufacturer to the server to like it's just a shell game here and VC money
Kind of
and
going back and forth, right? Exchanging hands.
Like, yeah, and everybody's looking to use AI to scale things that we already do, and that's a zero sum game. That's actually part of what's in my book. Mo, is that's a zero sum game. That's a race. Efficiency can only be instantaneously and as cheap as free. And so when you get there, then what? And so like there needs to be some more thought about what the economic value is of AI. And it's not more chatbots, not more AI automation, not more email assistants, not more social media generators or more AI avatar creators and stuff like that. That's what everybody's exploding on. So I think that the biggest danger with AI right now is getting it wrong economically.
I wouldn't have even thought that. There's just so much. The market is so saturated with the same stuff.
Yeah,
just different skin.
I think it's capitalism connected to the AI gold rush, connected to a laziness approach, and connected to a short-minded view on the whole thing. That ingredient mix right there, I think, is the biggest threat currently.
I appreciate that. That made me think something different. Okay, should powerful AI be open source or closed source?
I am a big fan of open source, right? Open weights, I think it's important. As a company, I think it's important for these companies to make money. And so you don't have to disclose like all of your weights and whatnot, but when you open source something, I do think that that is important. I think the only way to really protect all of us is to have democratized access to AIs, and that will ensure that there's no condensed, when you give somebody really that much power in a small number of people, it doesn't matter how good you are. It's always proven historically to end up poorly for the group. So yeah, open source, buddy.
Wonderful. This is a philosophical question, completely personal to you and you alone. So answer however you wish. Do you believe that AI in general will be a net positive or a net negative for humanity?
100% net positive. 100%. And the reason why I say that, because intelligence is generally the way to solve problems, or education is generally the way to solve, like I said, the isms, the racism, the sexism, the bigotry, generally intelligence. And if you want to get spiritual for a second, there isn't a religion that didn't automatically connect all knowing with all loving, right? When anybody was referred to their God as this all-knowing God, it was always an all-loving God at the same time. Like intuitively, we know that with the rise of intelligence, you have your deeper understanding of how interconnected things are. Nothing is isolated, and therefore you don't want to crush or stamp out anything else. The more intelligent something is, the less violent they are. There's just we just intuitively know that. We've known that even before we had electricity, that all-knowing and all-loving, generally we can sense that that's a good thing to be all-knowing. It's when you don't know something is when you have fear or hate that you run up against that ceiling is when you generally lash out in certain ways. So the more intelligent an organization, a community, an institution, a government is, generally they're going to be more benevolent and more loving and more kind and more effective and everything. So I generally think it's going to be net positive.
Awesome. Thank you for that. This was a question I wanted to ask you earlier, but I just put it on here because I thought that you could just knock it out of the park. Do you think that there should be an AI international agency, or like an AI or an international AI agency, almost similar to that of like the United Nations of some sort? Some form of agency that oversees not just the United States, but all countries, and everyone has to agree in some format.
As long as it's not like the WHO or something, or just, the one nation. So let me, in a perfect world, yeah, I love the idea. We're one people, Mo,
Right.
I'm the same as the person in Somalia, or same as the father just trying to figure things out in Afghanistan, right? We're one people. And so generally, I believe that way in a perfect world. However, borders are necessary because not everybody thinks alike, loves alike, prays alike, and that causes conflict. And so if there can be some sort of unifying force, I'm all for it if somebody can actually figure that out. I think that would be amazing.
An ideal, right?
In an ideal, does that does that, new world order sort of thing creep in to my psyche and think that there's going to be that sort of twist to an organization like that? Yeah. So I just, instead of condensing it, I would like it dispersed in general. And so I don't think that an organization can have some sort of like let's say we elect 58 people or 132 people from around the world and they form this thing and all that stuff. It's still 58 people against 8 billion or 9 billion. Right? So I generally think a dispersed view on this is how I'm going to always answer that question.
Thank you. Last rapid fire question. Do you think AI development should be halted or paused for the interim?
No, I think what we should do is take a pause of what's not working in the schools. We should take a pause of what's not working in government. We should look at these other institutions and focus our pausing there. Like we have all these big problems to fix, and actually AI can help a lot of those. Or if we recognize that AI is out of the box, we can't stuff that Pandora's box closed again, we have this global race that we talked about earlier, then we better get our other institutions in line to handle that properly. Our financial institutions, our education institutions, our government institutions, our legal institutions. We should pause what fucking we used to do in the 19th century and update this stuff. Like that's what we should be pausing on and refocusing our energy there instead of focusing on and playing this scapegoat mentality and pointing the fingers at AI as the problem when we have a broken system in a lot of other ways. It just needs to be updated quick. So let's work on that instead.
Thank you for that. I think that's important to consider because we tend to shift our focus on things that we don't need to be focusing on and really focus on the things that have been a big issue for a long time. And I know how important the education system is to you and to me. We've had this discussion in the last episode, but so many people are just focusing on the wrong thing because we're distracted or things become elusive due to some form of media manipulation, right? It's what is the narrative that you're going to be shown today? And here you go. Now this is your focal point instead of just actually thinking for yourself and doing your own research and really thinking about what matters to your life. Anyways, here comes Luna wanting to chime in the last minute.
There's a certain courage that's necessary, I think, today, and I'm trying to embody it just as well. I forget the philosopher that said this or the psychiatrist, Molo, something like that. I can look it up after the show, but basically that the opposite of courage is conformity, actually.
Yep.
And it's not just conformity to the system or something like that, but conforming to like doing it the way we've always done it instead of like stepping in to like embracing the storm head on. And even Carl Jung is very, very clear about how like we develop these sort of mental neuroses or these mental illnesses because we reject reality. We're not facing the pain or the unknown or the fear or the judgment or the change that we have to happen through. And so we create these false realities and they detach us from reality. And therefore that's how these mental illnesses actually sprung up. This was a Carl Jung thing, right? We do that as a society too. We tend to like shield ourselves from what needs to be addressed, as an example, like the education system, because we have this new scapegoat that we can villainize over here. And so we come up with this mental illness sort of thing and this psychosis around something that is not even true. Meanwhile, we just got a big skeleton in the closet over here and we're pretending like it's not real. So that's where I think of this whole thing as well. Again, I'm not judging anybody. We're all human beings. I just think that if we have more awareness, like, oh yeah, we do tend to do this, then maybe we can make a different change. Maybe we can make a different choice. But I think it's Marsha Lineman. I mean, she basically said pain plus non-acceptance is suffering, right? So, but pain plus acceptance equals healing. So whatever this pain is, this unknown, this economic divide, there's something with AI, we have to have an acceptance to avoid the suffering. It's the non-acceptance of reality, of whatever the reality thing is, that equals our suffering. And that's what we have to get through, especially with this topic. So it's just a very simple, elegant formula. You can look it up. It's not my work. It's Marsha Lineman's, but it's a very simple formula. And it's really, really true. And we can see that when it comes to things like topics like AI even. And so I don't know. That's why I don't think a lot of these conversations are just about AI. A lot of these are human psychology questions. AI is not building AI. We are. We're not. Yep. AI is not training AI. We are. We're coding it. We're in charge here. So at least for now. At least for now.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much for always being so insightful and coming from a place of, I don't know and I don't have all the answers, but this is what I've got. And, I think a lot of people can appreciate that and respect that. What people can take away from this conversation, whether to be optimistic or pessimistic about AI and where we stand from an ethical, moral standpoint, I truly hope that they do have the opportunity to think for themselves, and maybe this episode leads them to new rabbit holes. I don't know. So what's next in this series? We're excited for next week's episode, and we thank you so much, Eric, for being here, and thank you to all of our listeners. We'll see you next one. Take care.
See you then.